Welcome to another episode of History Now the Future, the show where we take a sharp look at some of the most pressing issues of today, using history as our guide and the future as our destination. My name is Cory Bradford, and one of the main reasons why legitimate conservatives within the Republican Party continue to support Donald Trump is because they believe that Trump's broad popularity is key to keeping Republicans in power. Having Trump on the ballot almost ensures a higher turnout rate for Republicans. However, that also comes with ceding an extraordinary amount of power to Trump via the White House. The hope among most Republicans has always been that once Trump gets into power, he will restrain himself, normalize his behavior, and conduct himself in a dignified and professional manner by appointing qualified individuals to high positions within the government. However, that never seems to fucking happen. Last time Trump was president, he appointed several unqualified and incompetent individuals to high positions, such as Betty DeVoe over the Department of Education. But this time around, Trump seems to be stepping it up a notch, appointing not just unqualified people to high positions, but people who literally pose a grave threat not only to their respective departments, but to the American people in general. Now, Trump's first few proposed appointments for his second administration started out fairly normal. Then there was the odd announcement that both Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will run a new department called the Department of Government Efficiency. Because that's how you make the government more efficient. You start new departments and expand the actual size of government. Also, why do they need two people running it? There's an episode of The Office as well as countless historical examples illustrating why that's never a good idea. And think about this for Vivek Ramaswamy. Ann Coulter told him to his face that she would never have voted for him for president because he was Indian, and that only true white people should be president of the United States. And now, the only position that Vivek gets in Trump's new administration is one he has to share with a white immigrant from Africa. Next thing you know, they're going to make him pay for his own knee pads. Trump's cabinet picks took a sharp downward spiral when he chose Pete Hegseth to be his Secretary of Defense. Now, Hegseth is a combat veteran. However, he never served in any senior position within the United States military, and for the last few years, his main job has been as a Fox News host. His appointment to such a high position baffled top military and foreign policy officials due to his lack of experience. But more troubling news about Pete Hegseth has arose in the last week when it was revealed that back in 2017, he was accused of sexual assault, and he later paid off his accuser in order to avoid a lawsuit. Now, it's important to point out that charges were never filed against him, and Hegseth claims that this was a consensual sexual encounter and that the woman was simply lying in order to get money from him, which she successfully did. However, it never looks good when you're paying someone off to keep them quiet. Trump also announced that he's making Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic congresswoman, his new director of national intelligence. Now, this is a bit troubling considering Gabbard has long been a major defender of dictators like Assad in Syria and Putin in Russia. However, she has been actually quite critical of some of Trump's actions, including his military actions in Iraq against top Iranian generals. Nevertheless, her nomination might pose a bit of concern for many of the Arab Americans and Muslims who decided to support Donald Trump in the 11th hour of the 2024 election. Of course, this support was mainly out of their anger over the Biden administration's actions regarding Israel and Gaza. However, Tulsi Gabbard has long been a huge alarmist on, quote, Islamic terrorism, calling it the greatest threat that the United States of America currently faces. She is extremely pro-Israel and has called on Israel to totally obliterate Hamas at all costs. In fact, many of Trump's nominees do not even recognize the very existence of Palestine. Yet another example of fucking around and finding out. But two of Trump's cabinet picks stick out as more than just problematic. They're downright insulting. The first being Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his pick for Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. RFK Jr. tried to run for the Democratic nomination for president, and when he saw no support there, he then decided to run as an independent for president, and before the election even took place, he dropped out of the race and endorsed Donald Trump, which was probably his real plan all along. Now, after dropping out of the race, RFK Jr. plans to drop other folks out of the human race with debunked and dangerous anti-vaccine stances. RFK Jr. once heavily contributed to an anti-vaccine misinformation campaign that led to the deaths of more than 70 people during a measles outbreak in the American Samoan Islands. RFK Jr. has also stated on several occasions that there is no such thing as a safe vaccine, and this country is going to find out very quickly that there is also no such thing as a safe Kennedy, or a Kennedy that's safe. However you want to take that joke. But the most insulting pick that Trump has made by far is the pick of former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. Matt Gaetz was investigated on multiple occasions for sex trafficking, and although no charges were filed, a House Ethics Committee was still investigating him for the possible sexual assault of a 17-year-old. In recent days, a lawyer for two prostitutes claims her clients were paid by Matt Gaetz to fly to New York City and have sex with him, which is the definition of sex trafficking. And this isn't really all that surprising considering that Matt Gaetz was once the only member of Congress to vote no on a House bill designed to stop human trafficking. Why would he want to stop his friends? Even some within the Republican Party are questioning Trump's rationale for making so many controversial picks. Many believe that he is simply trying to assert his dominance over the Republican Party and the country itself, and daring a Republican-controlled Senate to defy him. This could even be seen as an early loyalty test, Trump's gambit to see how much he can get away with in order to prepare for increasingly erratic decisions moving forward. Remember when Trump said he wanted to be dictator for just one day? Well, it looks like it's going to be one destructive 4-year-long day. We got a great show for you all today. We're going to be talking about how many on social media are leaving their ex for bluer skies. And also, World War III. Is it around the corner? But first things first, it's time for Trending Down. Welcome to Trending Down, a segment where we take a look at some of the more trivial topics floating around the internet in the past week. And I don't think I've ever had a story that exemplifies the title of this segment more than today's story. More than 100 million people worldwide tuned into Netflix this past weekend to watch the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. A fight that some are calling the biggest boxing event of the decade. The fact that I even said that sentence outside of a satirical skit should illustrate everything wrong with our society today. The farce that was the Paul Tyson fight was an example of three main features of our current culture. It was glaring evidence of how we are living in a post-truth society. It was also peak bullshit media hype. And it was an example of why everything just seems to suck these days when compared to past times. First of all, if you thought for 1 second that a 58-year-old man was going to be able to beat a 27-year-old man in a boxing ring, then you are more delusional than guys who really think there are sexy MILFs in their area just looking for hookups. All you gotta do is click the link. It doesn't matter what the status of that 58-year-old boxer was over 30 years ago. It also doesn't matter how illegitimate you think that 27-year-old boxer is today. If they're in the same weight class and they're both in peak physical form, the 27-year-old is going to win every single time unless they have some sort of disability. It's just that simple. Now, I'm a fan of Mike Tyson. I'm glad he got to relive some of his glory days the other night. But so many people were being blinded by toxic nostalgia, thinking that just because Tyson was the baddest man on the planet in 1995, that he was going to be able to be the baddest man on the planet at age 58 in 2024 for 8 2-minute rounds. And that was never going to happen. Now, the internet is saying that the fight was rigged because Tyson wasn't really trying to throw good punches. Was that really rigged or just father time? Everything about reality would have told you what the outcome was going to be in this fight long before you saw it. And yet, hundreds of millions of people still watched it, and many people still lost money betting on Mike Tyson because of cognitive dissonance and the fact that we live in a society truly devoid of a keen perception of basic reality. You also have to remember that the Paul brothers, Jake and Logan Paul, are excellent grifters. They're really good at hyping up an event or a piece of content and having you all fall for it. They basically finessed the hell out of the entire country by making people think that a Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight would actually be entertaining. And Netflix, what was up with all the technical glitches? I've seen blocked out pay-per-view channels in the 90s with better reception. At least I could get a clear visual every few seconds through those colorful wavy lines. Seriously, every 2 seconds. Steaming horse shit. And there's no way you're gonna convince me that Heinz ketchup is better than Hunt's. No fucking way. But seriously, boxing used to be one of America's great sports. Boxing stars used to be on the same level as top NFL quarterbacks and NBA stars and baseball stars. And now, that fight was considered the biggest fight of the year, possibly even the decade? That's really sad for the sport of boxing, but even sadder for all of us who had to watch it. Today in Lessons in Social Media, I want to talk about how to effectively quit social media, or particularly how to quit a social media platform. Since Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election, a lot of celebrities, notable figures, and brands are no longer using Twitter because, of course, Twitter is owned by Elon Musk, and Musk helped Trump win the election. Elon Musk has also pretty much turned Twitter into a conservative propaganda machine, this after years of claiming he wanted to hear from both sides. So much for actual real free speech. So now many left-leaning figures have left Twitter and are moving onto a new platform called Blue Sky. It's not that new, it's been around for a few years. Blue Sky is kind of like Twitter without all the eugenics articles. And this app also saw a mass influx of users back in 2022 when Elon Musk first bought Twitter. In the past week or so, Barbra Streisand, Jamie Lee Curtis, Gabrielle Union, and author Stephen King, among many others, have deactivated their Twitter accounts. Since the election, more than 115,000 users have left Twitter, while Blue Sky has seen a 500% increase in daily usage. So if you're one of the many that is tired of 20X and you're leaving it for bluer skies, let me give you a few tips. First things first, there's no reason to give us your explanation for why you're leaving Twitter. Twitter has been a terrible platform long before Elon Musk took it over. I don't know what it is about Twitter, but it really brings out the worst in nearly everyone who uses it. I have seen grown adults, politicians, athletes, musicians, authors, just engage in the most immature, spoiled, obnoxious behavior while being on that site. My toddler knows how to interact with people in a more respectful manner than the average interaction that takes place between two people who disagree on Twitter. It is an absolute disgrace what that app has done to political discourse, to journalism, and to our ability to disagree with one another without insulting one another. Now that happens on all social media sites, but there's something about Twitter that really exacerbates the problem. The second tip is you don't have to actually announce that you're leaving Twitter. Making that announcement just gives more fuel to the conservative trolls who now control Twitter. They're just gonna say shit like, "Bye, Felicia. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. You can't handle all the free speech here," and other nonsense like that. Just leave. Maybe let people know on other platforms that you no longer have a Twitter in case someone tries to impersonate you there, a very rampant problem on that app, but don't make a big deal about it. Also, don't get discouraged when you join a new platform like Blue Sky or maybe even Threads, the meta version of Twitter, if you don't see a lot of followers at first or you don't see a lot of traction on your early post. It can take some time to build on these platforms. I know a lot of influencers and creators who are moving on Blue Sky and they're not seeing a lot of traction for their post. They're getting really discouraged. It's not going to happen overnight. That platform needs some time to adjust its algorithm to all the new users. So keep posting and don't worry so much about the numbers at first. Lastly, I do want to caution folks about isolating themselves to only like-minded social media platforms. It's really not a good thing for our society if all the conservatives are on Twitter and all the liberals are on Blue Sky. That's only going to create more bubbles and echo chambers that simply reinforce our biases instead of challenging them. it's important to know how different kinds of people are thinking about different kinds of things. Even more so when so much of that thought is fueled by misplaced aggression and personal frustrations. Nothing good can come from Americans only getting their information from biased sources that only tell them what they want to hear. That's how our cable news has been for decades now, and look where that has gotten us. And if you really consider the political opposition your enemy, then you need to truly know how your enemy thinks and works. If you know your enemy as much as you know yourself, you will be victorious in every battle. Or something like that. Within the last 48 hours, Russia reported that Ukraine fired several American-made long-range missiles inside of Russian territory, marking one of the first times that Ukraine has attacked on Russian soil and representing a deadly new phase in the Russian-Ukraine war that's been raging since February of 2022. Russia claims it shot down all 6 of these missiles fired by Ukraine, while U.S. intelligence claims Russia only intercepted 2 of 8 missiles fired and that the other 6 hit their target of an ammunition storage facility. Previously, the United States, through the Biden administration, had refused to grant Ukraine permission to use U.S.-provided Army tactical missile systems within Russian borders. However, it appears President Biden has changed this policy in the last days of his presidency. So why now? Some are claiming that quickly evolving war conditions on the ground necessitated the change, while others are claiming that Biden is simply trying to provide all the last-minute help he can to Ukraine before Donald Trump gets back in office and greatly curtails support for the country. Either way, Russia has issued a nuclear threat, making a change to its laws and now stating that the use of, quote, Western non-nuclear weapons by Ukraine can trigger a nuclear response. Although U.S. officials say there is no hard proof that Russia is actually preparing to launch a nuclear attack, the threat alone shows how the only major war in Europe right now could spark a wider conflict engulfing the entire globe. I want to thank you all for watching this week's episode of History Now the Future. Now, you've probably noticed that we haven't been doing as many interview episodes these last few weeks. That's mainly because we've been trying to get all this information out about the results and the aftermath of the 2024 presidential election, but we are going to return to interview episodes. In fact, next week for Thanksgiving, I won't be doing a monologue episode like this, but I will only be doing an interview episode. We're going to be talking to content creator and author Michael McBride about his new book. He will be on the show next Tuesday. So Tuesday of next week on Thanksgiving week, instead of doing a monologue episode, we'll just do an interview episode on Tuesday of that week, and there will be no other episode during Thanksgiving. And you're also going to see a lot more interview episodes. I got a lot of new guests lined up, so watch out for all of that. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a video. And thank you all for watching. We will see you guys next time.